Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khairul mursaleen Muhammadin al-Nadi al-Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd, yaqulu Allahu ta'ala fil Quran al-Kareem, inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu tasliman. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Maulana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I would like to begin by reading the Iranian Parliament Speaker Ali Larijani on Sunday, that's today, at a conference, The Future of Islamic World in 2035. One thing about the Chinese, when they start talking way in the future, they kind of brought everybody else along, looking off into the future, and that's perfect because, they start having conferences on, but everybody has had future plans. One of the last talks that I gave in Tehran in 2016 was on that subject, that Iran has to figure out what it wants to look like in the next 10 years. Where does it want to be? And then once it gets that vision of itself, then it has to begin to do the work. Now, they're already doing it. But there's a difference between having a 5-year plan, because 5 years come just like that. Plus, it's hard to predict the future. That air is getting okay with me if you want to cut it off. But I want to read his talk. Now, of course, I want everybody to pay attention because I want to see if you've heard this talk before. Ali Larijani on Sunday deplored sponsoring terrorism by the U.S. and some regional countries, putting at risk the world peace and security. Okay, we're off to a good start already. Larijani made the remarks at the International Conference of Future of Islamic World in the Horizon of 2035. Held in Tehran. He said that terrorism has turned into a big problem in the region. It has damaged security in many countries. Instead of going ahead with economic development, the countries in the Middle East have got engaged in security issues, suffering from a lot of economic damage. Larijani said that the U.S. and its allies in the Middle East created the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, that is ISIS. But after a while, they lost control of the terrorist group. They had the same problem in Afghanistan as well, with Taliban. They decided to suppress it, which shows that they cannot understand the Muslim world. When they are plaguing Islamic countries with terrorism and insecurity, the Muslim world cannot reach economic development, said Larijani at the University of Tehran. He said that the world intellectuals and scholars should undertake to propagate international peace and understanding, to isolate radical groups being sponsored by the U.S. and certain states in the Middle East to carry out terrorism operations. Larijani said that academic relations are useful for helping settlement of disputes, and that the academic ties should be a good diplomatic road to international understanding. Larijani said that the academics and researchers from different countries are interconnected and they enjoy common political understanding, which helps resolve the disputes in the long run. He said that when Saddam Hussein intended to attack Iran, all of the dissident groups came together in Baghdad. They were informed that Iraq would attack Iran in a few days. All but one group happily agreed to help. A group told the others that they were making a mistake and that they didn't know Iran and Imam Khomeini that well. Iran would resist to Saddam's invasion and gain victory. He added that some of the countries with the green light from the U.S. engaged both Iran and themselves in an 8-year war. King Abdullah was wiser than the present officials of Saudi Arabia and was aware of the regional issues. Iran set up relations with him. Larijani said that in a meeting with Saudi security officials about Iraq and Lebanon, one of them said that Saudi Arabia has done 2 mistakes about Iran and now regrets them: making Taliban and helping $40 billion to Iraq to invade Iran. Okay. He added that there are security problems in the Muslim world. The terrorists entered Iraq and changed it to an area to grow terrorism, and then attacked Syria. That's Erna. Larijani said the meeting with Saudi officials. Yeah, that's it. Okay, does anybody recognize any of the things that are said here?
Same thing we said.
In fact, this is the exact khutbah this Friday, word for word. We said that Saudi Arabia, we said that that the United States created Boko Haram, they created Daesh, they created ISIS, they created all of those organizations. They created them. And it is not that, and when they create these organizations to cause terror, the money that they would be spending on reconstruction goes to the United States of America, Britain, and in the past France, and what have you, for weaponry. The military-industrial complex. So, he didn't get to all of this, but the CIA and all of those groups, the security apparatuses in America since 1947, actually before that, when it was the OAS in World War II. The CIA was basically started with the help of ex-Nazis. Just like the space program was helped by Wernher von Braun. Anybody ever heard of von Braun? He's the one that was sending V-2 rockets to Britain. But when the war was over, they took the German scientists, which was on the verge of everything. Remember Germans' jet engines? All of that came out of Germany. The V-2 rockets that was blasting Europe, they just took that and changed it to a space program. By the 1950s, they was building 3-stage rockets to go almost out of space. The Russians also captured Russian scientists. The Russians captured German scientists. The big gain after the war was the German scientists, and some even Japanese scientists, because they come up with some pretty good stuff too. They just couldn't get it ready in time. That's when the Russians came out in 1949 and 1950 with the hydrogen bomb. Way bigger than the atomic bomb. From then on, it was off to the races. They say that they say in this article right here that the U.S. or no, Saudi Arabia and other regional powers created these groups, and they got away from them. They didn't get away from them. Under the instructions of the USA, the Zionists and the Saudis create these organizations. Do you know that whenever that Syria was being bombed by the Israelis up until right now, and that they were helping, in their hospitals and everything, that they helped Daesh and all them people?
Right.
It's just open secret. It's just right there.
Right.
It's not that we're one step ahead of Iranians. They're doing good on where they are. But Daesh did not get away from Saudi Arabia. Taliban did not get away from Saudi Arabia. The U.S. infiltrated their own creation. And they're the ones that took them off into the woods. Okay, so Saudi Arabia and some of the Gulf states creates these groups. Fine. For the first few months or even a year or two, they're under the control of Saudi Arabia and their creator. After a short period of time, the CIA agents that are in there, mixed with them, ascend to the top. They either kill the guys that's running things, or they, all of a sudden, you ever hear so-and-so just got killed, so-and-so. So then they got their people in there, and they're either at the very top. The very top is created by Saudi Arabia. But the infiltrators from America are always on the council. They're always useful. They're always right there. I read this so people would see. It's not that the West is dumb, but they think if they can keep us off the internet, if they can keep us diverted from this little thing or that little thing, that we won't be up on what's going on. I have been on the internet and I don't know when. It makes no difference. Do you know that we learned decades ago to read what they're doing by NPR, National Public Radio? Very accurately, very, very, very accurately, because before they do something, you can tune into them. In those days, National Public Radio was something you could plug into, and in the real old days, in the 80s and the 90s, you could hear, even in the 2000s, early 2000s, you could hear BBC, and the BBC would have Islamic programs, and they would be talking about subjects. For instance, from 1 o'clock at night, they put the stuff on the news that nobody heard here. So they would give us the jump. When you learn them, there's a period where you could see how they set up things. You can see how they arrange things. It's clear. You can watch the news pattern and you could tell, you could forecast what they're getting ready to do and being very timely about it. Because they always go by setting things up and arranging things. So, then it came a time when they know how skillful we was monitoring them. Just listen to the radio. Then we could tell when they interject in things into their own radio program that's aimed at us. I'm just telling you what I believe to be the truth. I could relate hundreds of incidents. It's aimed at us to feed us information, and hopefully we'll make the wrong decision or make the wrong prognostication. That hasn't happened. Just like keeping us from the internet and all of that, they don't keep you away from it, they just pull a plug and do something, and you just don't have it. If you don't know how to run the things, they can, all the stuff, every one up and down there, they just, anybody that know how to operate them, can plug them up, replug them up, print out stuff, but they unplug it, or they do whatever they do that. They've been doing that. It has never had any, in fact, it don't make you absent-minded, it makes you sharper. It makes you sharper because you're aware what they do makes you so sharp that it forces you to pick up all the things that are floating in the air and put them together. That's why we talked about strategy last week. Strategy is dealing with the unpredictable. But strategy means that the future is unpredictable, but you got to try to put all the stuff together, right? And it's your duty and responsibility to try to predict the unpredictable. Okay, now I just happened to read that, I just saw it this morning. But I want everybody to understand what level we're on. In the international world, that's what he just said. It's Sunday, it wasn't Friday. He said it today. It's 8 hours ahead of time. He said this today. Okay, we said it Friday. Only thing about what we said was a little more detailed. We drew the military-industrial complex into it. We drew the money that the government makes off of it. If the military-industrial complex starts wars all over the world, that's what they make money off of. That's why it haven't been no peace. There's no money in peace for them. They're not going to make money selling lollipops and balloons for birthday parties, and peace parties. But if they can sell a $75 million Abram tank, good God Almighty, and just run them off the line. You run them off the line, they go and they get blew up. Here come another one. Just look at the wars. Look at the money they destroyed in the last 40 years. In the last 40 years, most of the focus have been in the Middle East. After the revolution, it's been the Middle East. If you want to call, actually Iran is in technically Asia, and so is West Asia, so is Pakistan, Afghanistan, and what have you. But visually and religiously, you would say they're part of the Middle East. So we wanted to just read that off so people could see, not people so. We hear. See, if we tell the people where we are, they're not going to believe it because we're black. They're just not going to believe it. They don't believe that the government has produced a real live gorilla community. I mean, that can, worse than Margilla Gorilla. Remember Margilla Gorilla? He drank hot oil off the stove. Remember him? That was a bad boy. The kids was why I said, boy, that's a bad boy. I think that was way back in the time of my son, Margilla Gorilla. I said, good God Almighty. This boy go up to the stove and drink the hot grease. You know, that's tough. Ain't no sense playing with that. That's serious. So I wanted to read that, so to remind us. They mentioned Afghanistan. This program is on the future, International Conference of the Future of Islamic World in the Horizon. Even that is our language. It's our daily language, you know. He felt that terrorism is diverting the Muslim world from reconstruction. He just doesn't quite get how, he's on the money, how purposeful it is. It's specific. Remember, the world we want to see, they don't want to see that because everybody would be free and independent and, you know, like, only reason you would vote for somebody if he guarantee you, like they guarantee you chicken in every pot, stuff like that. I guarantee you world peace. I ain't gonna sit here in this office and let anything happen. That's somebody to vote for, because he guarantee you, and he's working all day to make sure you have peace. He ain't putting up with no war. And plus, we don't have no armies anyway. And we take all the nuclear bombs and for the next 100 years use that energy for in nuclear plants or something. Might as well do something with them. Can't bury it and go away. Just use it up. You know, and let the world rebuild itself. It has no nuclear bomb. Imagine all of them 50 megaton bombs. Do you know they got 100 megaton bombs? They got bombs. I think they stopped increasing in size.